Welcome back, y'all, to the start of our city on the Ohio River. As you can see, we have a big one today with the construction of the downtown for our major metro area. Along with building the downtown, we'll be doing a sunken highway, some crazy highway interchanges, and some detailing. This was a behemoth of a build that ended up being redone like 3 times before I ended up with this final design. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment on what you like and what you don't like. And without further ado, let's get started. We'll start off today by purchasing some tiles across the river from our most recent town. I'm going to clear away this local highway and some trees and get to terraforming the place out to make sure that it's nice and not exactly flat, but suitable for building. I want the city to have a more gradual slope up to this top height here, and by the end it feels like it's almost flat. It's hardly noticeable, so I think it works out pretty good. As with any city, you gotta start with the roads. So I'm gonna build a somewhat compact grid here. I do not want a large grid because this is some prime real estate up across the river. So we gotta make use of it as best we can. Alright, and here is the starting grid for the city. I'll do a little terraforming along the riverside. The riverside waterfront district of the city won't be complete today. I'm a little conflicted on how I want it to look. I know I want some old industry, like riverside industry. I would like to have an arena around here too. It's just hard because by the end of it, there's not that much space. Alright, now I'll go back in and re-establish connection with the local highways. Here I'll try to add a bridge to get that connection across the river. Here I'm trying to figure out which one of these roads I'm going to use to establish that bridge connection. This road right here makes the most sense for establishing that connection, so I'll delete the houses at the end of it, and then I'll cut off these roads from access. And now I'm trying to figure out which one of these bridges I want to use. None of the bridges we currently have looked right for what I'm going for, so I end up making my own using some custom built roads as well as some of those bridge kits you can find on PDX mods. The idea for this bridge is it connects higher up on the hillside, not just directly into the waterfront area. And then using those bridge kits, I'll just put some trusses across the way to give it more of a older kind of bridge feel to it. These aren't exactly the kinds of trusses I'm picturing, but I think the end design is about as close as I can get it. I had to use Move It a lot to ensure the heights were all correct and that the truss beams weren't running right into where the cars and trucks were going to be driving, as well as making sure the angles were all correct for these downward slope areas. Once I get all the heights set, I'll come back with these stone pillars and then make sure the bridge looks like it's supported. Once that's done, I'll extend the grid out a little bit and establish that bridge connection on this side of the river. Once the bridge connection is established, I can start working on the sunken highway. This trench we're building needs to be deep enough to have some roads going across it. I'm taking heavy inspiration from Cincinnati here. So imagine those roads in the deep set trench running right through downtown. The interstate will not replace this local highway, but it is gonna work in conjunction with it, at least on the left side of the city. And you can see I'm already struggling with getting this connection through. I'm gonna have to delete some of these roads and reconnect them once these interstate roads are in. But once I've gotten the highway at least through the downtown center, I'll come back up and then build some roads with some key walls as sort of the border for the trench. I'm relying very heavily on some of these one-way roads to make sure traffic flows as best as it can in this downtown. And I'll work to establish some on and off ramps into downtown directly from the highway. It takes a little bit of finagling to get all the slopes right and just as smooth as possible, but I get there in the end. And these bridges across from the highway are pretty integral to making sure we have the connections needed for people to move across the city. And like I said, they're making use of the one-ways is going to be a big help in keeping traffic flowing steady. Here I'll do a little bit of lane math to make sure we have the necessary amount of lanes needed for on and off ramps as well. Alright, and as I said before, I had to delete some of these roads to make way for the interstate. So here I'm just going to go back in and reestablish some of these connections, as well as build out a little bit more of the grid. I'll upgrade some of these lateral roads too to make sure traffic can flow this way as well. This local highway is going to be converted to a pretty major arterial that's going to be able to get people from downtown to other parts of the city. Yeah, adding the on and off ramps is proven a little difficult. The terrain does not like it at all. So I just have to use move it manipulation mode a lot of times and smooth out the sloping terrain for the exit, and it works out fine. This underpass that I'm about to build proved to be a little bit more trouble than I thought it was going to be. With the 4-lane road coming in at a downward slope to meet the local highway, it proved to be a little bit tricky to get these bridges over it and have enough space for on and off ramps. Like, this intersection is right up against the river, so there is not a lot of room to kind of move things around. And I also didn't want it to be an absurdly huge incline on the interstate, as that could prove pretty dangerous for any drivers on the road. But I'm gonna start with the easy exits first, get those done and out of the way, and then I'll work on that last exit there in the corner last, just because that's the problem area right there, and you'll see what I mean in a second. Yeah, look, it's pretty tight right here between the highway and the interstate road. Um, so I have to destroy the highway road and then establish that on ramp before coming back in and reestablishing the highway road connection. I should also explain my usage of highway and interstate. So all interstates are highways, but not all highways are interstates. So in my mind, an interstate is typically the more higher volume highways with the more built up infrastructure. This right here would be the interstate. And then the highways are the smaller, lower capacity roads like this one right here that typically can zigzag a little bit more than an interstate, where an interstate tries to be as straightforward as possible. It's not always the case with a highway. Anyways, here I'm trying to figure out where all these connections to the outside world are going to come from. And I need to get this intersection right here built up just north of the bridge we built in episode 3, I want to say. But I'm going to keep it simple and just go with a 3-legged directional intersection here. I don't really use the kind of preset ones, as I feel like they just don't work as well as conforming to the roads as, when you build yourself, even though I'm pretty terrible at building these things. Yeah, on second thought, maybe I should try to use some of those prefabricated intersections more often, because this just gives me so much trouble just to do a simple intersection. But now that I've added an extra lane to the equation, I have to make sure all of the lane connections are all correct. And we got the first leg down, it's time to add the second one. With the bridge built, I'll just come back through with move it and make sure all the inclines are the way I like them, not too steep, and just enough room for cars going underneath it to actually have clearance. All right, at 15 minutes later, I feel like we're finally ready to start our downtown. So let's take it to a time lapse. All right, and here I'm using the Georgian row homes. I don't really think I've seen anything like these in the area before, but I feel like they look pretty good, and you can imagine these are like some of the oldest homes in the area, so I've kept them in. I like the pub here too. It's just like a little cottage in the middle of the downtown. I think it's kind of an interesting layout. Maybe they're a holdout from someone trying to buy them. And I like this park right here. For many, this is going to be the first thing you see, or one of the first things you see when you come into the city. So to have that right there is a nice little way of kind of showing the character of the city. Here I'll place down some custom surfaces for the sidewalk next to that sort of hybrid mixed residential shopping mall that I made. You also might have noticed this park in the background. I'm not exactly happy with the design of it currently, so I just let that part out because I'm going to go back through and change it and make it a really nice looking central park. And of course, we got to make sure we have our death care services. This cemetery here, I imagine, will be built out further. I want like a really big cemetery in the area. As morbid as it might sound, I think having a big cemetery, first of all, it works as like a park, and it just kind of helps to show the history of the city and how long it's been around. You can see I'm mixing in a lot of different types of buildings here. A lot of UK and Netherlands assets. I'm trying to work in some more German assets as well because the region, historically speaking, had a lot of German immigrants. So I think the Netherlands assets and the German assets work perfectly to kind of capture that culture in the historic buildings, I guess you could say. And now I'm just going to work a little bit to fill in some of these gaps outside of the major skyscraper landmark kind of buildings that I wanted to place. Alright, and here now I'll give some districts to the area. I don't have any names for this. I barely even have names for the other towns, which we'll get to later, but I just wanted to kind of have labels on, I guess, the distinctions, like the character of the districts that we're going with here. So that's what I'm doing now. Alright, and I'm using this office from the Office Evolution Pack. This thing is awesome. I love how it has the old facade mixed in with a more modernized building. I think that works perfectly for our city here. And And now I'm really trying to get as many brick buildings in here as possible, mixed in with some more modern stuff, but I want the bulk of it to be pretty old brick buildings. So a lot of the Northeast American, Southwest assets, they work pretty good. I wasn't really sure how I was going to fill this lot out, but what I ended up doing is taking the same building but with the lower levels and then splicing it together to give it like a step feel, and I think it ends up pretty cool. This is what I imagined to be some kind of administrative building complex. What I did was I just made, two assets, and then I'm taking these covered bridges, and I'm going to use them as connection points for both buildings to give them sort of a sky bridge feel. End result turns out pretty cool. Alright, I'm not sure how much you can see of that traffic on the bridge we built, but it is just not cutting it. We need another bridge to ease the flow of traffic into the city. So I'm looking at this 4-lane road here, the river lock, and we're just gonna connect. I believe the word I was trying to say was connect, but we're gonna connect it to this other 4-lane road across the river here. So we're gonna do that now. All right, everyone say goodbye to the railroad on top of the levee because that is just not going to work now with this bridge. And it's kind of a redundant route anyways. We have railroads that can connect on the opposite side of this town here too. So I'm going to elect to remove the railroad and just replace it with these sidewalk key walls instead. With the new bridge up, I'm going to look at the traffic here to see what else we can do to help. Um, and looking at some of the routes for these cars, it's looked like we're going to need to put a new interstate up connecting to that part of the river. So that's what we're going to do now. And unfortunately, that means we have to delete this neighborhood here. I looked at other places, and that's really the only spot it could go right now, which I kind of knew going into it, but it's still unfortunate. Yeah, this intersection is getting a little crazy here, but it's really the best spot to do it without actually interfering with the current city we have. So, I'm just gonna play some more music and you can watch the insanity unfold here. You might be asking yourself, what am I looking at right now? And I can't answer that question because I don't really know what it is, but it works and it's kind of kooky and I kind of like it. Jumping to the other side of the river, I'm pretty much building this on a whim. I had an idea for building, I think after watching a $2.20 video, I saw, yeah, it was the custom power plant. I saw that and I knew I needed to build not a power plant, but I needed to build another old old brick building. So what we're doing here is making this sort of I don't know, I guess condemned building here. I really want to just decal it up, make it look real old, real dirty. Then I'll come back through, make it a little bit overgrown vegetation wise as well. All right, and after I put down a big hunk of trees, I'm gonna go back through and really make the surfaces look worn and just barely, usable. And I think it looks pretty good. I think I did a good job of showing that. But I wanted to get all this graffiti all over the back side of the building and on top of these roof entrances. And I think it looks pretty great once we're done. But I do apologize for the very sporadic camera angles at times, and that is something I will work on in the future. I'll put down a few props to show that this stuff might have been left behind after the building was abandoned. Put a couple of water towers on there. I kind of brass, I don't know, I guess it's like brass, but it makes them look a little bit older. And it took me a little bit to figure out how to make these smokestacks, but these are basically industrial props that I just sunk into the building and hid the main building for it. The chimney props can't really work because they show smoke coming out of them, and I'm trying to make an abandoned warehouse. So I think the end result looks nice. I like it a lot. It gives a little bit of character to this corner that I just didn't really know what to do with until now. And I really love all the graffiti all over the building. This is probably someplace where all the kids come after school or whatever and just make their mark. I'm coming back into that new age renovation district, and I put down they're the atrium apartment buildings, but I like the look of them a lot. They give a nice, like, I don't really know what era they are. I guess like an 80s kind of building, but I like them a lot. They fit the vibe I'm going for in this area a whole lot. And yeah, look at all that traffic though coming in. It's crazy. I spent a little time adding some row homes and more apartments and detailing the place up, and I think it looks nice. And now I'll spend some time filling out the back corner of the city here. I really want this church to sort of be the eye catcher for this corner. I just think the asset looks beautiful, and community wise, it's probably extremely important to the area. I'm thinking this German elementary school is going to be part of the larger church complex. It's probably going to be a privatized school. And we got to add a square in front of the church. This will be a nice place for people to just, catch up, spend some time outside after church. And I'll put down these parks so that, everybody can use this place. You can go to the food stand and grab a bite to eat and just have a nice public place in general just to relax and take in the views. I should really build more of these because it looks really good. All right, y'all. That is all we have time for today. This was a behemoth to edit. That's why it took me so long. But at the end of the day, I think it turned out really nice. I am very excited to continue building off of this. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch the video. Please leave a like and consider subscribing if you like what you've seen today. Also, leave a comment on what you like, what you don't like. Probably messed up something. You can tell me about it. But with that, I hope you all have a good one.